Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the replay of our All Clear Learning Series session on staffing. This was originally recorded on Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. Here we go. Let's go ahead and jump in. So thank you everybody for being here for our All Clear Learning Series session on staffing. So super excited to kind of kick this off. And I mentioned this in an email, but I will also mention it here that this really came from a conversation that we had on one of our previous All Clear Learning Series sessions. And it was kind of a question at the end of the session where somebody said, "Hey, what's going on with staffing with everybody?" And it was a very short but engaging conversation. And I thought we really need to jump into this in a deeper way with folks. So that's what we're going to do today. I don't have a specific agenda, except that I want to hear what your challenges are and also what some of your suggestions are. Certainly, there's things that I've experienced over the years that I'm happy to share, but I also know that we get some great input from the people on the call. So want to make sure we have room for that and give people opportunities for that. But before we get too far in, we're going to do some introductions. So what I'd like you to share in the introductions is obviously your name, where you work, a little bit about what you do if you'd like, but also what was it that you wanted to, or what was the reason that you wanted to join this call today? Was it because you're having some staffing challenges and you're looking for some best practices? Is it because you have best practices that you want to share? Is it because you're just kind of looking for other people to corroborate the fact that we're all having some staffing challenges? Whatever that reason is, we want to hear it and kind of use that as our springboard for the conversation. So Daniel, you are in my upper left-hand corner, Daniel Stewart. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead and go first. Take it away.
Sure. Sure. Thanks, Matt. So my name is Daniel Stewart. I'm the Director of Guest Experience at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County. And I've been here in a few different roles for about 18 years and been doing this kind of work for about 20 something years now, 25 years, I guess. And the main reason I'm here is because it's been kind of the bread and butter of what I've sort of grown up in, right? Is looking at staffing, look at the puzzles of how do you sort of balance the guest experience with your sort of staffing budget. And I'm interested to hear what other people have done. And I think particularly post-COVID probably, but just over the last several years, the dynamic or the challenges have changed. And so interested to hear what people have done to try and address those. We've also opened a new space here recently too. And so that added some new wrinkles, really sharing some of my experiences, but also just hearing a lot from other people who have dealt with similar things that I've had to deal with.
Excellent, excellent. How's that new area going, Daniel?
It's a challenge. Just the way the flow is not ideal right now. Hopefully when the Lucas Museum opens, it'll be better, but it's been a challenge for us still.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, thank you for being here and thank you for kicking things off. We'll go to the other Dan, Dan, and I will call you Dan and the other Dan, Daniel, and hopefully we'll keep things straight that way. Take it away, Dan.
Hello, my name's Dan Hudick. I'm with Waldemar Park in Erie, Pennsylvania. I was the water park manager for about 20 years here, and we've grown more than doubled in size over the last 10 years. And now I'm largely out of necessity, more on the facility side. And there's another newer employee that started about a year ago that is handling personnel. And I I just don't think you can ever know enough about or too much about staffing, and I'm supporting the personnel manager here in our water park. I will always do that as long as I'm here. I'll support everybody here. We all need to succeed, so that's why I'm here.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Dan. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. All right, Lyssa, you're next.
Hi, my name is Lyssa. I am a client relations and administrative coordinator for Jessica Rhodes Designs. I'm also a resident artist and instructor at Mixer Community Makerspace, among a bunch of other things I do. And I hopped on because Jessica is, I think we're under 2 years old. So I kind of came on this call to learn from all of you. So that way then I can hopefully avoid potential pitfalls. We have started taking on interns, so that is a positive step for us. We've got a fair amount, and we're mostly looking at the high school and college age. But yeah, it was mostly I should come learn about staffing things in case we expand further than that.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, as Dan says, you can't know enough about it. So glad you're here. Lyssa, if there's one thing that you would say that you'd like to learn, what would that be?
Um, I'm not sure because I'm new on this end of it.
Okay, fair enough.
So it's kind of like a you don't know what you don't know.
Got it. You're going to learn it all. I love it. I love it. All right, Jessica, you're up.
Hi, I'm Jessica Rhodes. I'm the manager of guest services for Mode Aquarium in Sarasota, Florida. And I guess the reason I jumped on this call is because we are building a whole new aquarium facility. So we're already have 7 other campuses. So that will be campus number 8. One campus is being rebuilt from the hurricanes. The other campus is going to be renovated because of the hurricanes. So I manage 3 out of our 8 campuses. So at this point, I'm just trying to learn more about how to manage multiple campuses, multiple departments, and basically, yeah, how to figure out how to expand. The new aquarium we have is twice the size of the current operations. So, yeah, any advice for doubling up teams is great.
You get one of those machines that doubles your staff, right? That it just clumps them, and
Yeah.
you're good.
Yeah, that's what I need. I have a great staff right now, so if I really could clone them, I would.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate it. Rachel, you're up.
I'm Rachel. I'm the senior operations manager, specifically over rides and attractions for Zoo Tampa. I joined today, and it might not be necessarily applicable to what this is, but it's more like staff engagement. Because we've done a lot of things to engage our staff. Interestingly enough, we at IAPA, you taught about doing like support groups. We're doing like support groups in our ride department, but it's just getting those few employees that just don't seem to want to participate in anything that we have to offer. So that's why I joined today, but I'm also I'm always happy to learn different things from different parks and, bring them home.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate it. All right, Mr. Kyle, you're up.
Good morning, everyone. So my name is Kyle Jankowski. I am the facilities manager here at the Andretti's Indoor Karting and Games, our newest facility out in Glendale, Arizona. So a brand new facility. I was brought on about 6 months ago. I am over 3 different departments, the facilities, maintenance, the janitorial, and then they threw in a curveball for me, and I also take care of the mechanics for the karting side. The reason why I'm here, for one, huge fan of Matt, of course, but this is something new. Matt knows in my previous position, I managed myself. I was the sole person for the facilities department in my last company. So this is a little new of managing multiple departments and multiple people. So kind of I'm with pretty much the rest of you guys is learning the tips and tricks, the kind of the nuance of managing multiple people / multiple departments.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Kyle. And that $20 I promised you is in the mail.
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Kyle. All right, Robert, you're up.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Robert Boskin. I'm the risk manager at the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk in wonderful Santa Cruz, California. However, one of the challenges is it's very expensive here, and trying to find people to come and work in this very expensive area is a challenge. I'm specifically now trying to find someone to supervise my first aid department, and that has been I think it's a great job, but it's just been one that's been very difficult to fill. Ideally, if there's someone that's retired that wants to work and live over here, it would maybe be good to supplement income, etc. But what I run into is a lot of people commute from San Jose, which is about a 45-minute, pretty tough commute, and they do it for a while and then they get burned out and then they quit because it's just too much, either the cost of the gas or that. So I'm joining hopefully to get some, maybe, am I missing something? Am I not doing something? Or I don't know. I guess hopefully, Matt, you can wave the magic wand and give me some ideas, but
Whee!
that's where I'm at right now.
Perfect.
Thank you all.
Well, I can tell you there is no magic wand, although if someone had a magic wand, it would be Cheryl, and she's next. Cheryl, you are up.
Well, thank you. And I made it with 1 extra minute in case you stopped that timer, just so everybody was knowing. First, I want to start off with thanking Matt. And I know you have many fans here, but I am the original president of the Matt Heller fan club. Sorry, that position has been taken. Matt, you still owe me a check for like the last 10 years, but don't worry. I do have a passion for staffing, something that I love more than anything else, because the better your staff, the better the experience, the more successful your park will be. Whether it's a water park, a zoo, an aquarium, it just doesn't matter. It's really the most important thing I think we have to worry about. I've had the honor of presenting everything from motivating without money at IAPA to how to host your first hiring party, which if you've never done one, I will tell you it is probably the best way to launch your team, engage your team, build camaraderie. It just really works really well, except for, and I've probably done 100 of them, last week in Pigeon Forge. Nobody here's from Tennessee, so I'm okay. Um, that was a challenge, very similar to, people have to commute 45 minutes to an hour to get to different things. There are 5,000 residents, yet 15,000 job openings. So I've dealt with every possible challenge, and anybody wants to throw out a question, I know Matt can answer it, but I'd be more than happy to add my 2 or 5 cents now since we're getting rid of pennies.
Thank you for that, Cheryl. I appreciate that. And yeah, your check's in the mail too. I don't know why it's not there yet.
Postal.
Yeah.
They
I'm
just
still waiting. I'm still waiting for a check from Michael Shelton too, so I'm not holding my breath. But anyway, so what I heard as sort of a through line to a lot of the things that people talked about was staff engagement. And that's what Cheryl had said, but I also kind of heard it in what Daniel said and Jessica specifically. And so what I think would be kind of an interesting thing to do is kind of start off with that as our header, staff engagement, and then kind of work maybe more specifically from there. So let's first of all just kind of define what staff engagement is. So when you say staff engagement, whether it's people across multiple campuses, whether it's an intern, whether it's the first aid person, what does staff engagement mean or look like, even to the people on this call? And it may be different for other people, but let's start with just the people on this call. How do we define staff engagement?
I would say just participation in activities. To me, if we do something that's for the betterment of them, or I would like them to participate in it.
Okay, so I'm hearing participation. Great. What else?
You could just tell when people want to come to work or enjoy coming to work. I have several employees that you can see, right when they're walking in the door, they are just happy to be there. And then there's the few. Hopefully, we all make the right decisions of picking the right people that want to be there. But there are always those few that you can just tell that they're in here just to collect that paycheck and do the bare minimum and then go home. Which sometimes there's not a problem with that, but you always love the people that are a little more engaged and really enjoy coming to work, because that they will do the best job. They'll go over and above for you.
Well, thank you for that, Kyle and Rachel, for starting us off as well. I think the trick there is figuring out, can you engage someone that is currently not engaged? right? Can you drive participation? Can you get someone to, have a little bit more pride or care based on what we're doing? That it may be coming some from them, but also coming from some of the things that we're doing as well. So that's a kind of a question we can get into because I think that hits multiple areas that people were talking about. So awesome. Thank you for that, Kyle. What else is engagement?
Hey, Matt, can I just throw in my 2 cents? So to me, I think it's a good, um, I guess, goal or measuring tool to see how your staff will interact with guests. So if we can't interact amongst ourselves as a team, then how are they going to be able to interact or engage with our guests as well? So I think it's something that comes from within, and it's something to keep trying to foster, because that's what we find. We don't want introverts or someone that doesn't like to work around people to work in first aid. We want someone that's empathetic, that will listen, that will help problem solve, and yet allow the guest to continue to have a good day, or employees, or etc. So um, that's my thought on it.
No, I love that, Robert. And I definitely think there's a connection between how someone interacts with your guests, your customers, your public, and how they're interacting with the team. At the same time, I've seen very few cases, but a couple of cases where there are people that for whatever reason within their personality, it's hard for them to relate to the people around them, but you put them almost like on a stage like out with guests and they come alive, right? So I think sometimes it's in the evaluating the team member, it's evaluating the position they're in, and certainly one of the things that I was thinking about as we were starting to get into this topic is engagement can be very personal to different people, right? So as Lyssa is talking about, expanding her team, and Jessica's talking about getting a bigger team. It's how do we scale that personal touch so that everybody feels like they are the most important person on the team, which gets harder and harder the more people you have on the team. But that's great, great perspective. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate that. Cheryl, you're unmuted. Was there something you wanted to share?
I just forgot to hit mute. I do want to go over to Robert for one quick second because I know we go on so many other things. Robert, just out of curiosity, how and where are you recruiting for that first aid person, if you don't mind sharing?
So we did some internal. They did a blog or a ad on Indeed, which they told me, oh, we got 30 resumes, and then after we looked at it, maybe about 3 of them out of that 30 were quality material. And then word of mouth too. We've encouraged staff, if they know someone, because we have a employee referral bonus program that's worked out to be really well. But since it's somewhat of a specialized position, it makes it a little challenging because we're looking for someone that obviously has the credentials as well as the experience and leadership. So that's where I'm running into some hurdles.
So I'm just going to jump and give you, if you're okay, some ideas that I would be doing if I were in your position. The very first thing is don't be frustrated with Indeed. Yes, most of the people that are clicking are just proving that they applied for a job. Plain and simple. They're not qualified, they don't care, but they had to show unemployment that they did it. The top 5 places that I wrote down that I would be recruiting from, one is the American Red Cross because they teach safety and first aid programs. 2 is your local hospital and the emergency room. Yes, I would bring them a basket of cookies or swag or whatever you have from your park and say, hey, we've got this great opening, and put a tag on what it is. I would go over to the fire squads, the ambulance squads, and even the nursing association in your state and say, we're looking even for a retired nurse. And if you've ever heard of the website care.com, you can even find some people that are certified in safety and health. And those are just my first few ideas for you. I hope they help.
Wow. I mean, I got my money's worth right now. Thank you so much. Those are some wonderful ideas. I really appreciate that.
No, my pleasure. I will usually play this game because I'm all about games. Is throw out the toughest job you have, and I will tell you 5 places that I've researched to try and find people. And people are like, you did not really do that. I'm like, oh, yes, I did. I said, there is a way to find for every position. So anyway, Matt, I don't want to hijack anymore. I'll be quiet.
No, that's okay. No, it's okay. Because I think this actually ties into the engagement part of it and being creative in how we engage the team. So I just wanted to back up and see if there's any other thoughts on what engagement is, and then I want to kind of get into what Cheryl was talking about in terms of how we do it. So focusing on maybe creative places that we've not looked before or ways that we engage with our team. So any other folks have other thoughts on what engagement is?
I was just going to throw in there that I think, one of the things that we certainly try to do here is look for diverse people in terms of like personality types. So like introverted, extroverted, different types of delivering customer service, different representation for the community we live in, right? And so with that, it means there's not really one cookie cutter way to say like, this is how I engage with staff, right? It's going to be sort of individualized and as much as we can, right? And we have a team of probably 80 something associates at this point. And so that's next to impossible. But what we try to do is create programs that allow for some of those pieces, right? I think the jobs are hard, right? We have about 50% of our associates are full-time, and doing this 5 days a week, 38 hours a week is hard, right? You get worn out. And so I think that natural love is important that some of the people talked about, and that's just desire to be here. But I think it's also something else that they can connect to, and it can be the collections, it can be the role with the future if they want to grow here in other departments. It could be just that guest experience. There's all different, I think, aspects here that they can connect with, but having some connection that we can then foster and support is what we try to do with sort of our way of setting up our team, because it is hard on those busy days, especially over the next couple of months when we're in summer and the busiest time, to sort of be continually engaged and sort of feeling that, but trying to create those avenues is what we try to do, sort of create that.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Daniel. Appreciate that. Lyssa, Jessica, or Dan? I think Jessica went, or maybe not. I'm getting confused. Anyway.
No, I didn't go, but everybody kind of said everything I was thinking.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So I think then the question is, getting back to kind of what Cheryl was jumping into with Robert, is how do we do that? So how do we look for people in places where we haven't looked for them before? How do we engage people when your staff is getting bigger and bigger? How do we really show people that they are important? How do we, keep the staff going and motivated when the work is difficult or the guests are crazy or all those different things? How do we do that? And so I'll just share a couple things that I've certainly noticed over the years and have a lot of conversations with people about, and some of you are probably going to roll your eyes a little bit with how often I talk about this, but it's appreciation. Very simply, appreciation. When you think about the person that is out, like Daniel said, doing that hard job, like interacting with the guests and knowing that somebody has their back and being able to say, Lyssa, I saw how you interacted with that guest, and man, you made a big difference in what they did. Now that requires us to be out there and seeing that, right? So I think that's a big part of it, is being out in the operation. But I also think just that heartfelt thank you and appreciation will go a long, long way. Now, will it replace the compensation we're giving people? Absolutely not. People still need to make money. But at the end of the day, what I've found is that when people take that number that's on their paycheck, and if that's the only representation of their value to the company, then that number is never going to be big enough. So there's also the emotional connection that people have with your work. So whether they're a mechanic or whether they're a ride operator or whether they're, selling a ticket or, fixing a pump at the water park, there's a connection that people feel. And that's why, to Kyle's point earlier, that they will go above and beyond. That's when they get that gleam in their eye and they say, oh, I really love to work here. And they also will say, I get to work here, not I have to work here. So that's one thing that I will always come back to. The very first thing I will ask people about is, how much are we appreciating people, or how are we showing people appreciation? I think what also goes along with that, like we've been talking about in terms of the personal nature of things, is that different people appreciate different types of appreciation. Robert, you mentioned introverts. Daniel, you mentioned, you want introverts and extroverts, and there's different type of appreciation that people might enjoy. Let's take a quick poll on this call right here. Just raise your hand if you did something well in your business, and the way that you got appreciated for that was you were brought up in front of the group, you were given a hat and some balloons, and everybody sang a song for you, and you were the center of attention. How many of you would enjoy that and feel like that was a great way to show appreciation for what you did? Raise your hand if you'd feel comfortable with that. Okay, we've got one kind of, but there are absolutely people who thrive on that kind of attention, right? So I'm curious, since nobody raised their hand for that one, I'm curious, what sort of appreciation do you appreciate? If someone's going to thank you for a job well done or show acknowledgement for something that you've achieved, what would you want that to look like or sound like? Go ahead, Robert.
So I can comment on this. I'll use myself as an example. I've been with the company for 14 years, and people know who I am. But our HR department reached out to me a couple weeks ago and said, "Hey, we want to spotlight you in the employee newsletter. Are you willing to do it?" And I said, "Sure." So you had to send obviously a photo of yourself. You had to tell something that people don't know about you, why you like working here, etc. And what I didn't know is that got put on the sign-in page for everybody's time card. So I had people coming up to me that I didn't even know that, hey, I saw you on the UKG or whatever. And what I found is it didn't take me up in front of a group, but I was acknowledged in a different way. And people are engaging and coming up and talk to me that I really don't know at times, but since it's happened, it was, it's been kind of nice. So that was a way to recognize without having to go up in front of a group, but yet it was done. And yeah. Does that make sense? I mean, it was fun.
It makes total sense. Absolutely. All right. Who else would like to share what kind of recognition or appreciation you appreciate? Go ahead, Lyssa.
So previous career, I ran a public library makerspace. So I had a lot of guest interactions, very diverse, because we were like between middle schools and retirement communities and all that kind of stuff. So for me, what it became was if a guest had said something to a manager, or if one of the kids I'd interacted with showed off their project to another librarian and then they came to me and said, hey, this person that you interacted with either like said you did a great job, so thank you for continuing to represent us well, or the kid shared with me that they got to make a zippered pencil pouch. So it was the fact that my guests were willing to go share their experiences. And then that would get back to me through that.
And so would you say that part of that feeling, that good feeling, was that you saw the impact of your action?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Thank you for sharing that, Lyssa. I appreciate that. Who else would like to share?
I was just going to say, I often have joked that I've been in guest relations visitor experience for as long as I have, because I don't feel or like the spotlight on me, or like that kind of tension, right? Like often our teams, the guest experience teams, get sort of lesser pay, the sort of lesser sort of exposure. And so I think for me personally, that's something that I've recognized I have to sort of push against myself, not for my own recognition. So I'm kind of turning your question away from that, Matt, but not about my own self, but like my team deserves that opportunity, right? So how do I make sure that I support their opportunities to have that praise and that shout outs? And we do some things similar, like we have Slack that we use. And so if someone, doing really good on our membership sales, we'll sort of mention those people who are doing well. And so we try some of those things that kind of are the bridge between the getting up on the stage with the cat and the all that stuff, but also ways to sort of recognize in the kind of a lower key fashion. So that's what we try to do, support our team, and we try to find ways to sort of connect them with other teams and to, again, praise them where we can. But it's something that I've been aware of, that just because I have been fine with that and lived more happily out of that world, it doesn't mean that the people who work for me want that, right? Like they want and deserve the praise, right? Because again, it is hard work to do. It's not easy doing the roles we're talking about, right? Engaging with people constantly and and dealing with what they have to deal with. So that's something that I try to sort of keep in my mind of it's not about me at all in that piece. The other team members deserve to have the recognition that they earn and that they want.
And would you also say, Daniel, that kind of similar to Lyssa, that you still get some sort of satisfaction from when your team gets recognized?
Yeah, I think that's completely true. Yeah, I don't, I made it seem like I don't need any recognition, but really, I think doing it this long, you have to have some kind of thing because, to your point, paycheck only goes so far, right? It's never going to be enough to sort of do all the hard work, justify all the hard work we do. And so, yeah, I get my sort of satisfaction from seeing the success of the team, from seeing what they've accomplished, seeing them move into other departments, take on roles both within our team and other teams. And so, those are things that I'm really proud of, the team being able to deliver those pieces. And so that is where I get my sort of intrinsic feeling of worth or success, is seeing their success and the things that they go on to do.
Excellent. Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate that. Dan, what about you?
I don't know how what the age demographics are of everyone else's staff, but here it's predominantly 15 through into early 20s. I would say probably 90+% are teenagers. So, it's a lot of it is tone. It's one thing to say that you appreciate someone, but they need to feel that. There's a tone, a vibe, an energy, and if they don't believe that you mean it, it doesn't really, the words don't count for much. So, at the heart of everything is caring. They have to believe that you care about them as a human being, as a person, not just as an employee. So it's hard to explain or articulate how to do that, but I think that's at the heart of everything.
Well, I think you're right. It can be hard to articulate that, but I think it's a feeling that everybody feels. They know when they feel it. And maybe you can articulate that a little bit, but I think that gets back to the job of a leader is to foster that kind of environment where people do feel cared for. So was there something else you wanted to add?
No. I was anticipating you asking me to clarify something. That's why I unmuted.
Well, I am going to ask you a question because I appreciate that you're sharing about the younger team members that you're interacting with, and I so agree with you that tone matters, genuineness, if that's a word, matters, authenticity.
Authenticity, yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. But I also want to ask you, like, if someone were going to recognize you, are you saying that those same things matter to you? The tone, the authenticity, the genuineness? Like, what is it that would show you appreciation?
Yeah, I definitely, actions speak louder than words. I don't need to be told. I'd rather it be felt that I'm appreciated or valued or way over any sort of recognition. I don't like to be the center of attention. So,
So if I can
me personally.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think you're not alone in that. But I think that also poses a challenge to leaders because, okay, you're saying that you don't want to, hear it necessarily. You want to feel it. You want to know that you're valued. So what would be the lesson if I were your boss, if I were your leader, how would I show that to you?
That's once again, it's hard to articulate that, it's similar to, it when you see it, you know it when you feel it, and you know when it's not there.
Okay. Let's go there just for a second. What do people do when it's not there? Like, what are you seeing to say, yeah, I don't really think this person values me. So taking a look at it from the other direction.
Well, that's going to impact their job satisfaction level negatively, and they'll be less invested and less caring in what they're doing. If you can, build that sense of that culture and that community of caring, then that translates into your customer service experience, because they'll be so much more invested in providing what you ultimately want from them, because they actually care more.
Yeah. Appreciate that, Dan. Thank you so much. Any other thoughts on the recognition piece? Go ahead, Jessica.
I guess just also on my end, I'm kind of the opposite. I do like the awards, individual awards, but I find suited the team. So last year we do a team appreciation dinner that the company paid for. And what we did was we did superlatives for every single person on the team. Last year we played nice. We were very sweet, like, most likely to upsell a membership or something like that. And then as I got to know the team more, I was joking with them that this year I can be a bit spicier with their superlatives. So I find throughout the year they do little things and they'll come up to me and say, am I going to be most likely for this? And it kind of is a fun environment because it kind of pushes them to make their own superlative, if that makes sense, on the team. So it is something to with our company because we're building a new aquarium and we took a hit from the hurricane. We're very pinched financially. So it's something that I've been struggling as manager, being told, hey, we're no longer going to do appreciation dinners. So, coming up with other options like, okay, maybe if we can't do an appreciation dinner, can we at least rent out our own venue? So for my company, staff can rent out a venue as long as it's not rented out to anybody else. So I rented out, we have a thing, we call it the Cheeky Hut, and did kind of like the old school 5th grade field day. We just had a bunch of really fun games. We had kayaks for them. Didn't cost the company anything to do that, but it still gave them individualized time that they felt was being recognized for their hard work. So still trying to figure out how I'm going to give them superlatives this year, but really fun that throughout this year of me kind of taking over some of these teams that they're like, oh, am I most likely for this now? I'm like, I don't know. You got to keep working on it. So it's been pretty fun seeing that side of them coming out. I think before with the team, there wasn't a whole lot of purpose to them. They were just guest services. My big goal with taking over the team was I want other departments to recognize guest services. So it's been pretty fun. I've had quite a few team members get drawn into other departments now. And other departments are continuously coming to me and saying like, hey, we just realized your team has this, and this skill set. We never knew any of this about your team. And I'm like, yeah, guest services, we have the same degrees as the animal care team. So it's pretty fun because we can help the animal care team while we're moving to the new aquarium, while we're recovering from hurricanes. We can be watching their tanks for them. So it's pretty fun giving value to the team that they didn't recognize in their own selves. So somebody else was kind of mentioning diversifying the teams a bit to kind of reflect what your guests are coming in. So, we have team members that speak Spanish and the rest of us don't. And I was like, hey, teach us how to speak Spanish. And it's pretty fun because it's giving them ownership of small little projects that they can be doing. So it's been a pretty fun year. We're all learning Spanish collectively. We write it on the whiteboard. Every day we come in, there's a new word written on the board. So did not know the word for otters is nutria. But it's fun because we're collectively learning together. We're collectively getting these skill sets together. And I haven't had turnover in about a year other than people leaving to go to other departments. So we're still retaining within the company, which is great on the company's end. But I think by giving them individual recognition, that's kind of what's been helping my team at least.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you for that, Jessica. So many great examples in there. One of the things that I wanted to touch on that you mentioned, which I think again goes to the individual nature of what we're talking about here, is utilizing specific skills that people have. You noticed when we had people, giving their background and what they do, a lot of different skill sets are represented, today on the call, which I think is great. I think it's amazing for, the diversity that we can talk about here on the call, but also thinking about your teams. And, there's there's a question on a lot of surveys when people do like engagement surveys, and are you able to do what you naturally do best at work every single day? And if the answer is yes, you're much more likely to have someone that is engaged, that will participate and that will go above and beyond and do all the things that we talked about in terms of engagement, because they're doing what is natural, what comes naturally to them. I think about that person that is in front of a group of people who just cannot, find their way out of a conversation, and now they've got to talk to people all day. And like, that is the worst place that person could be. And you may put them in a back of house area where they don't have to talk to people. They're working on something maybe individually, and they're thriving. They're absolutely thriving because we've been able to find where that person's natural talent and skill set is. And I think that's the other sort of challenge that we have, is that we have a lot of positions, right? I know Robert's looking for one right now, but at the the larger Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk, there's a ton of positions there, and so many of you are working with lots of different people that sometimes it's about casting that wide net and getting as many people in as you can. But I think the more you can focus on those individuals and what skills they bring to the table, and getting those folks ideally in the right spot for those talents, I think you're going to see that natural engagement sort of rise. So I think it's a great kind of takeaway. Jessica, you also talked about, or at least what I took away from part of your conversation, was about purpose, right? And I think this goes back to some other things that were discussed already. When you think about why people engage with certain teams, why people engage with certain activities, why people engage with certain companies, it's because they recognize and understand the bigger picture, the why. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this not just because I was hired to push some buttons on a POS machine, right? But I'm helping people do X, Y, and Z. I'm learning something with the people around me. There's some greater purpose to what I'm doing that has nothing to do with my paycheck. And I think, again, that's where you tap into the brain power and the emotional power that people naturally want to bring with them. And I think sometimes you can look at the example of, children. If any of you have children, you were all a child at one point, right? And you were encouraged to draw and color and do all these different things. And where does that creativity go when you're an adult? Well, now I got to do a spreadsheet. Now I got to do these other things. And sometimes that creativity and that same questioning thought process is not as encouraged as an adult, or is not as encouraged as a member of a corporate team, or a team inside of a company or an organization. So that can also impact someone's level of engagement. So thank you all very much for a great conversation on engagement. I do want to make sure we touch on something before we run out of time, and it has absolutely everything to do, in my mind, about engagement and staffing, and that is when you have people that don't participate. You have people that are not doing what you're asking them to do. They're not engaging. It could be because of what we talked about a minute ago, that they're just not in the right place. But that right place may also be your organization. So I think it's also critical that we talk about, under this heading of staffing, is that, and most of you know me pretty well, like I'm the warm and fuzzy guy. Let's appreciate people. Let's build them up. Let's coach them up. But sometimes people are just not in the right role. And sometimes we have to help make that decision to set them free, right? As I like to say, let them pursue other opportunities. And that can be the best option for them. So I'm curious what you all have seen in terms of when it's time, like if you see somebody that's not participating and you say, okay, is this an engagement question, or are they really not in a place where they should be? And maybe we made a hiring mistake and they should really be working someplace else. How do you make those decisions? I'm curious what you all have seen and what you all have experienced over the years.
I mean, I think for us, it starts with that communication, right? Like, I've always said the hiring process is somewhat of a crapshoot. You can get better at it, you can do, but people interview well, people fool you, it's hard to find that dynamic, and it's hard for that person to know what the environment's like, right? So I think what we attempt to do, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, is really have a series of those conversations when they're in training, when they're starting in the team, when we can kind of observe how they're doing. And I think it really comes from that honest place of making sure they know the expectations, right? If they're not delivering, like they're not greeting guests or not doing those pieces, right? Like to have the conversation to make sure they understood and were trained properly, right? And if not, then obviously then we coach them and we make sure they know. But then I think ongoing, it's just really about conversations that you try to ensure that they understand the expectations and have that honesty of like, it doesn't seem like you're engaged here. It doesn't seem like you're, having fun or whatever. Like, what are the things that maybe are inhibiting you? And it could be the environment, right, is not the same. It could be they're still just apprehensive about making mistakes or, whatever the case may be. And I think we've seen all those. And some of them have been what you've said, right, Matt? At the end, sometimes the fit is not best. And it's trying to be as open with that, but really focus on the goal is to build them up, right? I think that still is the goal. In those conversations, it's about making sure you have the tools to be successful. At some point, the conversation is no longer about that. If we've given you all the tools and we've had the conversations, and then it's about not meeting the expectations and then having a conversation about either we, separating you from the company or you doing that yourself because you realize it's not a good fit.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Daniel. Other thoughts? Go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah, I totally agree with Daniel about everybody interviews well. They put on their best foot, and then once they get into the role, it's kind of interesting. Sometimes you go, "Wow, did they pull the wool over my eyes?" But one thing that I do that I've learned, in past experiences, is make sure that there's that open communication with all your employees. Formal and just in passing by. Is I try to make it a goal of just walking by all my employees and asking how their day is going. How's this? Making that personal connection. And usually you can feel stuff, but then, when you're having that formal communication, you dig a little deeper and, say, hey, I understand that, or I see that you're, when I'm asking you this, you're not engaging very well. What's going on? Asking those little harder questions and, asking those, where do you see your path going? Is this what you want to do? Is this the company that you want to be with? Maybe you're not in the right department, but have those conversations and go, I want to make sure that I help you on your journey. If it's in the company or if it's outside, outside the company, maybe this is just temporary. Maybe they're like, I just need this job to save up this money to do X, Y, and Z, or get to the school that I want to further, my careers. But just having those conversations, I make sure that I'm available for all my employees as much as possible. But then it's those two settings, just kind of casual, walking by. You can feel a lot of things. Of some people, like I said before, is you can tell that they're just so happy to be there. And that's great. But then there's those people that you can tell that are just kind of going through the motions all day. And then that's when you pick up. And then that's when, I try to have one-on-ones once a week. I know that sometimes that doesn't happen, but I try to have them on a normal basis. So then I can pick up on those and say, hey, I can see that something's going on. When I interviewed you, I've only been, we've only been open a month. So I've only been with my employees, about a month and a half, 2 months. So, but I'm already starting to pick up on those and starting to say, hey, I can see something's going on. Tell me where you want to be. Maybe it's in the kitchen, or out, fixing video games. Tell me where you want to be and I'll help you in that journey.
That's awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. And I'm glad you brought up one-on-ones because that's something to me that I've found is extremely powerful when you can, on a regular basis, whether it's weekly or biweekly or monthly, or, you want to do it on a pretty regular basis, but being able to check in and just have conversations. And sometimes there might not be a lot to share. Sometimes there's a lot, but just having that conduit of communication, I think, is critical. Rachel, you're unmuted. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of piggybacking off of the last two gentlemen, but it's, right off the bat, when we interview them, just seeing if they obviously fit the vibe of the team, walking around, making sure they understand what they're getting into, the expectations and everything. But then once you hire them, and it's to your one-on-one point, usually 30 days in, they should be pretty well trained and acquainted with the department. We bring them in for one-on-ones to go like, how's the last 30 days been? Like, do you feel like you're properly trained? Do you have all the tools that you need? And you can kind of like, correct anything that you've, seen and all that good stuff. But I think to the question of like letting them go, it's also the team wants a great environment. So if there's somebody that we've hired that isn't doing well, you can sense a disturbance in the vibe, and that something's happening, and those talks can also like, hey, we've been hearing this. How do you feel about this? And after one or two one-on-ones, and it's still just not working, it's for the betterment of the team. So we just cut our losses early, and because then the whole team is just gonna be disrupted for the rest of the season. So it's hard in today's staffing, but I've had to do it to 2 employees in the last 2 months, but it's worth it in the end.
And thank you for that, Rachel, because I think what you're getting at there is one of the things that I think of when it comes to staffing, and staffing is a long game, right? Even if you are a seasonal operation, there's a long-term impact to the decisions that you're making, whether you're hiring someone or you're letting someone go. Like, to your point, absolutely. And I thought you were going to make a Star Wars reference. There's a disturbance in the Force, but right. You're absolutely right that people can feel that. And at least in my experience, there's nothing that will bring someone's, like a high performer, there's nothing that will bring them down faster than you tolerating a low performer and them seeing that they're putting in, their high level of effort, and that person's putting in that low level of effort, and you're kind of getting the same thing, from management, and you're not treating the low performer with the coaching that they probably need, or letting them, pursue other opportunities. So I think you're absolutely right. And one of the questions that I pose to people all the time is I say, let's say that you have a team of 10 people, and on that team you have 8 rock stars that are just, all the time. They're the ones that are engaging. They're the ones that have that gleam in their eye. They're the ones that are always interacting with your guests. And you've got 2 sort of bad apples. Well, in theory, I ask people, okay, how many of you would rather run a little bit short-staffed with just 8 people, but know that everybody's a rock star, than you have the 10 people and that 2 people are bringing the rest of the folks down? Well, in the classroom setting, a lot of times people will say, well, yeah, of course I'd rather run with the 8 people. But then when I talk to people a lot of times one-on-one, and we have these kind of conversations, and I'm like, all right, you've got this person that's clearly a rotten apple upsetting the apple cart. What are you doing about it? Well, we really needed the position, we needed the person, whatever the case may be. And now all the excuses come out. And so I think, Rachel, you bring up such an important point that your recruitment strategies, your retaining strategies, it all starts with the people that you have on the team. So those are going to be really, really critical decisions that you're making along the way. And if we get back to some of the things we talked about in the very beginning with, scaling up and, people kind of going into the staffing realm, or, increasing your campuses, like, it's all the same type of concepts. It's just scaled. And I, again, had a conversation with somebody one time, and she said, I find that I get the most out of people when I can talk to them one-on-one and I can interact with them. I said, great. She goes, yeah, but I have 200 people that report to me. I said, that's a different problem. That's a scale problem. It's not that you don't know what to do. And if I could provide some observations about a lot of the comments that were said today, many of you, I think you know what to do. It's just a scale issue. And so then it becomes developing those leaders that can speak your language and be the people that you can delegate to if there's people in your organization that you can do that with. So it's taking what you already know about treating people with authenticity and treating people as human beings and recognizing them, and then scaling that out to a larger team. So that was all just kind of my reflections from some of the things that you guys had mentioned. So I see that Cheryl's got herself unmuted. So Cheryl, was there something else you wanted to share?
Couple super quick things. One is when Kyle said that they can fake it during an interview. I was sitting here smiling, wrote LOL. They can, because the first thing they do is Google, what are the top 10 questions I'll be asked? What are the top 10 best answers? I will tell you they cannot fake it during the hiring party. The hiring party that we host, it's all activity based. It's almost like American Idol meets hiring fun. And we watch who picks up the trash, who moves the pizza, who does, like everything tells you the real deal. And those teams bond and stay together better than anything. That was the first quick thing. And I loved the comment when you said that because I was like, everybody says it. And then when Rachel was saying, oh, I had to let 2 people go, I've probably hired 10,000 people in my career and have never fired one person. Never. I turn to them and say, congratulations, you are now eligible to become a guest. It's true. I can't fire. But we always say hire slow, fire fast, because Rachel, you're right. It is a cancer and it will pull everybody down. And Matt knows I also have a sports background. So I like to say, if I want to make it to the World Series, is my bench going to have the depth that I need, that I have all strong players, and you've got to cut those weaker players. And then I want to give a gift for 1 second. When we were talking about how to you can't clone yourself to reward everybody and motivate everybody. We came up with these mini motivator cards that the team can do peer-to-peer motivation. So that I could go up to Matt and say, hey, Matt, great job. You get one of these cards. And then the person who collects the most cards, they can put it into, like, there's so much you can do with it. But I came up with the first series and then we do it as an activity with the team. So that was just a gift. I said, hey, you know what? Take it, go back and try it. I can show you like even more. That's what somebody was coming in and handing me, these like mini motivators that are just fun. Okay. That was my have fun. You know, I like to have fun.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cheryl. I appreciate that. And thank you, everybody. We're just about out of time, but I do want to offer up, if you want to continue the conversation, go ahead and put your email in the chat so that everybody can get it. And then you can continue these conversations. I also want to let you know that we're going to continue these sessions, these all clear learning sessions. We've been doing them about once a month, and I think we're going to keep going with that. And typically they're about something we can learn, we can share with each other, we can grow, we can network with one another. And I do believe that the power of our leadership comes from the people that you get to interact with. So as much as this was about talking about staffing, I hope you also got to know a couple of people. You saw some people maybe that you've seen their name before. We can stay in touch, and you can continue to ask those questions, because 1 hour is never enough. It never is. So I hope to see you all on a future call. And of course, you've all got my contact information. If there's ever anything I can do for you personally, one-on-one, please feel free to reach out. I'm here for you. So thank you again, everybody, for spending your time with me today and with everybody. And with that, we will sign off and say have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you, everybody.